Okay, my guests today, they say, we are convinced that for true spiritual healing to occur, we must be willing to journey back to the circumstances in which we grew up. Often it is there that the Lord reveals how we were shaped by things that should not have happened to us, but did, and by things that should have happened, but did not. This quote comes from their book, The Missing Commandment, Love Yourself. My guests are Jerry and Denise Basel. They spent 25 years in their own counseling practice, and between them hold master's degrees, plural, in Christian counseling, biblical counseling, and theology. Jerry and Denise, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Fun fact for those who are listening, you both actually reached out to me about, I think it was six months ago or so summer of 2025. You had mentioned in your email that you had read one of my books, and particularly a chapter about how I finally, after 30 years, came to feel loved. And you had mentioned how that was similar to your own story. I think, Jerry, you were the one that said that. So you sent me a message about that, and in that message, you mentioned your book, The Missing Commandment, Love Yourself. And so when I read that email, I honestly was stunned because I immediately recognized your names and I recognized the title of the book because years earlier, I think, probably 2018 or so, it was a season when I was really studying God's love and what it means to love yourself. And somehow I had come across your book. I bought it, I read it, I highlighted it all up. And I think even in replying to your email, I mentioned a few of those highlights just to show the influence that it had on me. So with such a similar message, I knew that we had to talk at some point. So preparing for our conversation today, I was brought back to a question that I received back then, those years ago when I was reading your book. I can very much remember it. I was at a birthday party, I think, and a friend of mine was asking me what books I was reading, and I told them books about loving yourself. And they weren't all that amused. They actually kind of snipped back. I don't think people have a problem with loving themselves. I mean, everybody loves themselves, right? They thought it was kind of a selfish type of thing. So I'm sure you both get that kind of thing a lot. So Denise, what would you say to people who think that self-love is selfish?
Well, there's a total different definition of the two, because one is, as you love yourself, you're not doing it out of selfishness, you're doing it out of obedience to God.
Mm.
And so that's one thing, because we're supposed to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And so surely God didn't mean that we're to hate our neighbor.
Yeah, I find that a lot of the toxic traits that we see in others and see in social media and things like that, the real nauseating stuff at times, the arrogance and the pride and all of that, I find it actually comes from people compensating for love for themselves they don't have. And I think you both write about it in your book. I think you call it love deficits. In fact, Jerry, you said in the book that influences behavior as an adult more than anything. And I think you shared some of your own story about how it influenced like people pleasing and such. Would you just explain a little bit about the concept of love deficits and what that does for people as they get older?
My father had a lot of anger, and so he would get upset. You'd fly off at the handle, and you didn't know when, and then he'd be okay. And a lot of times that was with my mother, and so what happened was there were certain things that I needed to receive that God said I needed from both my mother and my father. And my father was not emotionally able to really communicate those things very well. And we always, we communicate that I know my parents loved me,
right?
But what does that mean? Because it's a word, but there's more to it than that. And I do know that they did. But my mother, so my dad wasn't emotionally available, and he yelled a lot. And my mother had some needs that my father wasn't fulfilling. And so when I saw that as the youngest, I would go and try to help her and comfort her. And
Huh.
and so what happened was the love that she was giving, or, because she was a very loving person, it was a lot of the time going the wrong way. I was giving to her versus her being able to freely give to me. And so I come out of that with a deficit from both my father and my mother. What I learned to do from that was to, number one, I hated anger. So I made a vow, I'm not going to do anger. And I hated conflict. So I would do anything to avoid conflict. So that's where I got into the people pleasing thing. you know, that's where, wow, he's a really nice guy. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't get upset. But I wasn't very connected. And then Denise and we get married. We've been married for 52 years. But see, my heart's not available. And
Uh-huh.
so she's trying to talk to me, get deeper with me, maybe at times make me angry because
Because
I
you
don't,
weren't even getting angry in the
no,
marriage, which a lot of
no.
people would think, oh, that's a dream.
Denise she did not think that. And
Need some passion.
she really, at one point, was very upset. And when she tried to make me angry, I just looked at her like, I don't get it. Why are you doing that? Because I was so shut down.
Obviously, we know that there are physical developmental stages where certain things are important at different levels that influence who we become, but there are emotional and psychological ones too at different ages. And you talk about some of those in the book. I'd love for you to just kind of walk us through what are some of the important stages and the ages that we learn them, and what happens if we don't learn them at those stages, how that affects us as adults.
The first 9 months of our lives are very important. It's, we're very connected to mom generally, and it's when we develop trust. And so if mom's depressed, if there's things going on, if she's not a nurturer, whatever, that there's going to be a problem there with the development of the trust that we need. And then going on from there, somewhere around 2 to 4 years of age or so, it's when we start to develop our identity.
Mm,
And this is, very
mm,
early, obviously. And
yeah.
so, and it's at that point where we're going to uh, internally reach a conclusion. And it's like, I'm me and I'm okay, or
Uh,
I am me and I'm not okay.
and you're saying that's between 2 to 4 years old.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
making that conclusion. I'm me, I'm not okay, or I'm me and I am okay. Okay.
And then after that, what goes on from there kind of builds on those foundational things. And of course, then we get into adolescence and teen years, and variety of things can happen. But the thing that is so critical is getting to those foundational periods. And now this is separate from, well, it's not separate from, it could include abuse.
Mm,
I mean, if someone is physically abused, emotionally abused through words, sexually abused, that makes, even more
that
of
just
an,
complicates the whole developmental
right,
process separately.
absolutely.
Okay.
Or if the marriage is in trouble,
Yeah, all kinds
you
of,
have to be the observer of all that and the fears that go along with that when there's an unstable marriage.
Okay.
All of that is very much contributing to the gut of the child.
right. And so when we worked with people, we would ask them questions. We would give them things to ask them, did you receive this to the best of your ability? And we would have lists of things. And because most people say, well, I had a good childhood, and we, and, But when they got a little deeper, and obviously they didn't come to us because they were doing well.
Is there a question that you would ask first to kind of dig deep into that might uncover something?
Well, it's specific to people, but we would, early on, we came across and put together, actually, we took it from others and modified it, but we would go through and we would ask these questions, like, for example, to what degree did you feel, now, the word is feel, not know,
Okay.
but feel loved by your mother and your father? And then we would give a description of that. For example, to feel loved, special, precious, significant, deserving of the very best. And we would ask them from a scale of 0 to 10, give us, your best guess of how much of that you received. Or we would do that with affection. To what degree do you believe you received affection? And then we define it: to be touched, held, cared for, to learn that touch is a good thing. It's, and they would do the same thing. So we'd go through a variety of questions like that. By the way, none of this that we're talking about is to blame our parents,
Right.
because that's what kind of the world will do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's to try to agree with God. What did he say? And are we in agreement with him? Because the ultimate goal is to forgive. Well,
Right.
how can we forgive if we don't know what there is to forgive?
Yeah.
When we forgive, what kind of healing do we get from that? Just by admitting the truth that I had a troubled childhood,
Yeah.
and that there were a lot of things that I needed that I didn't get.
We're talking, I guess, a little bit about shame here, and that's this idea that I am someone who is wrong, or as you said, I think earlier, around the age of 2 to 4, somebody comes to the conclusion of whether they are okay or they are not okay, and that would be shame versus no shame, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, as like the earliest feelings when I go back that I can think of is that I am not okay. There is something wrong with me. Now, I couldn't quite pinpoint it as a child back to 2 or 4 years old, but I remember feeling that. And then that affected me as I go into elementary school, and I was shy. And then it just kept getting reinforced then by the way people treated me and the things that had been said. So how would you counsel that person, like a first step that says, I have just always felt like I am not okay?
So what we would do is in counseling you, we would try to find out, how deep this would go for you as you responded to these questions. And then we would begin to ask you, more about, well, if you do have memories of things, or did you receive certain things? And at some point in the process, the client, you, whatever, would probably begin to come to terms with, wow, I guess I didn't get certain things that I needed. And we kind of use a little thing that we learned a long time ago from someone, and it's called what, so what, now what. So the what would be, well, what happened to me, or what didn't happen?
Okay.
And then the so what is like, well, did it matter? Was it a big deal or not? Because if it isn't, we don't need to look at it. And then now what would be, okay, where do I go with this?
Where do I go from here?
Where do I go from here?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a process. And because we had for the many of the years that we counseled together, and we had sometimes anywhere between 2 and 5 days with an individual or a couple. So we had the time to begin and get deep into that process. But people can do this on their own too.
Right. Well, and your book is a great kind of self-guidance towards that. Do you go back when you isolate that area in somebody's life that they particularly were hurt in, or they didn't get what they needed in? Do you go back to that specific area, maybe like that child within almost and work with that child at that point in their life for healing?
We do.
Yes.
We have.
It's
Yes.
like, because that place would become a place of being stuck.
So we would talk to them about that. We'd ask them questions about that. How do you feel about that child that you're describing? How did it feel when you went to school and you sat there and you felt just totally left out?
Right.
You didn't belong. And if their heart is becoming available, it might bring up some tears. It's grief,
Yeah.
sadness.
I remember when I was going through various things, and I guess the trigger or the little child within that almost kept haunting me into my adult years was back from probably upper elementary, even junior high. It was that little boy there on the playground, maybe in PE class. We had schoolyard picking teams, and I was often the last one of the few, if not the last ones that would be chosen. And so you'd have this big gymnasium or playground, and you'd have 30 kids that were already picked. And there I am watching people debate whether or not they wanted me, and I'm the last one standing. Well, that kind of thing kept coming back up. And so eventually I had to address that child within in order to heal that part of me.
Yeah.
You have a great practice that you describe in the book that is basically that same thing. And I love it, where you teach people how to write to yourself as a child. Now, people might think that sounds strange or something, but talk a little bit about what that sounds like and what that does.
It is probably one of the best tools that we have, the things that we learn from people being put in that very vulnerable place to write to that inner child at whatever age. It's usually around something that was painful or whatever for them, or abandoning or whatever, but what they learn about themselves through that process, they can actually feel some of the feelings of a younger child, at that time. I think painful, but still being able to relive a little bit, and in the midst of that, sometimes fall in love with that little child or whatever and become a friend to them.
Right, because it's not a process of denying that feeling, is it?
Right.
It's a process of actually healing that person that's still there.
Yeah.
It's not about getting over it.
Okay.
Just suck it up, buttercup, or whatever you want to say.
You're right when you said that it's some people, like, really? You want me to do that? And but see, our spirit, I go back to that, even if we don't remember, like you had a memory there, our spirit remembers.
Yeah.
And then as we go through the process with people, they come to terms with, wow, this little guy, or this, maybe it's a teenager. It depends on what happened to that person. It could be more than one age. But we'll ask them to, imagine that you can connect with that child again. And some people maybe, have a hard time connecting. So we'll say, well, do you have children? Do you have a child that's in similar age? Imagine that child going through what you went through. How would you feel about that? And it just cuts right through from their own, perspective, because we've learned all along to get over it, that it's like, oh, and then sometimes the tears will just start. But when they come in with that, we ask them to read that, because it's not, there's something about when you verbalize it
Yeah.
to someone else,
for sure.
So it makes a difference. It changes.
It's kind of what James said there. I think it's the heart of what he said in his letter, that we confess our faults one to another, that we
Yes.
may be healed. I mean, this isn't talking about forgiveness of sins. This is talking about wounds, and this is talking about that inner stuff.
Right.
That when you finally can get it out to somebody, a trusted someone, of course. We're not talking about telling the world.
I think that was one of the most precious things I found as a counselor, was that people were actually in a safe place, that they could trust me to share things that they haven't shared with anybody else.
Yeah.
And, and to receive those things, and, and there's no shock on my face or whatever.
Right.
Say, kidding, you did that? Or
Right. No judgment, no condemnation.
but just
Right.
acceptance and affirmation. And it's like, that's a lot for you to have carried all these years. And sometimes it's not even all that bad, but it just has been such a difficulty to actually be honest and forgive ourselves.
What do you say to that person that they're hearing this, and, some people are going to hear it and they're going to say, okay, I got what I needed from this conversation, and they go on with life. But there are those that were touched hearing what you had to say. There are things that were provoked in people, maybe people that are watching now that have tears streaming down their face, but they're scared of going to see somebody, going to counselors, because of a number of issues. But one of them I hear so often in, sadly, our Christian circles is they fear it's going to show some sort of a lack of faith. What do you say to the person that's afraid of taking the next step?
Well, for one thing, we tried to tell them that, first off, that's not God that's telling you that. Because everything we're doing with a person or communicating is to try to come into an agreement with him, and with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. So in regards to faith, we tell them really that it actually takes a lot of faith to walk into these areas, because what you're doing is you're trusting God with your heart, with yourself, and he is fine with that. He's fine with weakness. In fact, Paul talks about his strength. The Lord is the strength of the Lord is made perfect or perfected in our weakness. But that doesn't sell tickets in the Western church.
No, sadly. Yeah.
And we've learned the opposite. But it doesn't seem that we often feel the same way if we have some kind of physical malady.
We'll go to the doctor pretty quickly over that. And feel no shame. Right.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not about a faith issue. I guess some people might get, but not generally. And so, but when it starts to get into this arena, it's like, well, I should be able, by praying hard enough and doing this, I should be able to overcome this. And, but we have to be able to know that I can trust God. He says it's okay, that, and he wants me to trust him. And he looks at it as great faith when you walk into these places, especially the unknowns.
I often say, I think I heard it before, but I say it so often, is nobody gets where they are all by themselves.
Right.
You didn't get hurt by yourself. There were many influences that brought you to where you are. And, often in our healing, it's the same process. You got to bring somebody into it. And it is an incredibly strong thing to do, to be able to do that. And I can say, sitting here, having been through counseling myself, it's a strong thing to do, but it's a very rewarding thing too.
I had to spend a couple of years in counseling, and the journey continues. I mean, we're never all the way there.
No, right.
That's for sure. Then we have another issue.
Right. There's another counseling session there that's necessary.
One more at least.
Okay. I've got a final question for you both. I want you both to weigh in on here. And while you think of it here, I'll just tell you up front so you can think about it, is I'd like your best nugget of truth in case, somebody's listening and this is all you have with them. I'd love your best nugget of truth on what would help somebody to truly love themselves in the way we've been talking about here. But while you think of that, if you've listened today and thought, this is me, this explains so much, I want you to know that you don't have to stop here. You can take this further. Jerry and Denise have generously allowed me to offer you their book, The Missing Commandment, Love Yourself, along with their powerful 7-session downloadable video teaching. So you'll get that on your email receipt instantly, so you can start while you wait for the book to arrive. We're offering this as a thank you for your donation of any amount at kylewinkler.org/loveyourself. In this healing package, Jerry and Denise gently guide you to the tender places that might need God's touch in your story. They help you understand and care for the child within, and ultimately lead you into a deeper encounter with the Father's love so you can live with confidence that you are a beloved child of your good Father. I'll send you their book, The Missing Commandment, Love Yourself, plus their 7-session, 45-minute downloadable video teaching when you give any amount at kylewinkler.org/loveyourself. Okay, Jerry and Denise, let's say this is your last opportunity to talk to somebody who's listening. They're going to go on and live their lives from here. What would be the best nugget of truth that you'd like to leave with them? Maybe something that would really help them love themselves. Jerry, we'll start with you.
To acknowledge that there's an issue. There's something, in other words, to be honest with yourself and with God, and that and to begin there, to say, you know what, I don't want to stay this way. I need some help, because I can see, I'm beginning to see that there is, and then to begin to open that door.
Denise, is there anything that you would add to that?
I guess I was thinking more along the line of, I'm not alone.
That's good.
But I actually have a Savior, a God, a loving Father who really cares about the things that are maybe not important to somebody else, but they're important to me.
That's good. I mean, put together what you both said is ultimately be willing to be honest, because after all, you're not alone. God is with you, and God is for you, and God loves you. Jerry and Denise Basel, thank you so much. And for those listening, don't let this conversation end here. You can keep going and invite Jerry and Denise into your own journey. When you make a donation of any amount at kylewinkler.org/loveyourself, I'll send you their book, The Missing Commandment, Love Yourself, along with their 7-session, 45-minute downloadable video teaching. You'll get that right away on your emailed receipt. This is a package that feels like personal one-on-one guidance as you walk toward healing and wholeness. That's kylewinkler.org/loveyourself. And that does it for the Shut Up Devil Show. Remember, God is good, and He is for you, and we're here for you too. Every week on my website at kylewinkler.org and on our podcasts and social media. And don't forget, wherever you're watching or listening, tap that subscribe or follow button so that you never miss a show. And I'll see you next time.